For decades physicists stared at chalkboards covered in symbols that seemed to argue with reality. Single particles left behind interference patterns that belonged to waves. A photon launched toward two openings behaved as if it split into versions of itself, took both routes, then met at the far wall to interfere with itself. But the moment a detector tried to watch which slit it used, the ghostly pattern vanished. Choice appeared. Possibility collapsed. What should have been simple became strange. To make sense of it, science built a new language, quantum mechanics. Now look at psychology. Some minds do not march in a straight line. They branch. They layer. They refuse to be pinned down by single labels. They feel connections that classical models struggle to map. If you are an INTJ, INFJ, INFP, or INTP, you already know what I am talking about. Your inner world does not move like a billiard ball on a table. It ripples like probability. When you plan, you see multiple futures at once. When you feel beyond the room. When you think, you stack contradictory ideas and hold them gently until the truth steps forward. Tonight we will name that experience. We will borrow 5 ideas from quantum theory, not to claim your neurons are literally subatomic, but to offer a framework that finally matches the texture of your life. By the end, you will understand why decisions ache, why awareness scrambles what it touches, why your intuition reaches farther than it has any right to, why certainty slips when you chase it, and why becoming anything costs everything. Quick note before we begin. Whether consciousness runs on quantum physics is an open question in neuroscience. The brain is warm, wet, and noisy, conditions that make fragile quantum states difficult to maintain. But here is what is not controversial. In many experiments where human judgment defies classical probability, quantum-like mathematical models describe our decisions better. Quantum cognition is a real research field. Think of tonight's video as a lens, a story that maps elegantly onto your lived experience. You do not need literal particles in superposition for your inner world to behave as if they are. Ready? Let us walk through the 5 principles that define the 4 quantum minds. You might want to subscribe now if this is already ringing like a tuning fork in your chest. I make videos for people whose minds do not color inside the classical lines. If that is you, you are home. Let us go. Here is principle 1, superposition. In physics, a particle does not occupy one neat state until it is measured. Before observation, it exists as a spread of possibilities, a wave of maybes. Translate that to psychology. Your mind does not hold a single track. You inhabit overlapping tracks at once. Picture the INTJ scanning a complex system. They do not see a lone outcome. They see a lattice of potential end states, each with a probability attached. If this variable tips here, then that bottleneck opens there, which unlocks another path 3 steps later. The entire decision tree is alive in their mind. The INFJ senses emotional weather. They do not hold one feeling. They feel several at once, the feeling in the room, the feeling behind the faces in the room, and the future feeling that will bloom if no one speaks the truth. The INFP carries multiple selves that are all authentically real. The crusader for ideals, the gentle friend, the solitary artist, the healer with words that arrive like rain at the perfect moment. They are not pretending, they are plural. And the INTP runs mental simulations like a data center, opening parallel lines of logic and allowing them to coexist until a hidden assumption reveals itself and half the branches fall away. If you have called yourself indecisive, reframe it. Superposition is not confusion, it is capacity. You are holding more of reality at once than most people do. You already feel the cost hidden inside every yes. Because every yes is a funeral for 1,000 other futures. To decide is to collapse the wave. No wonder you hesitate. You are not dragging your feet, you are honoring the weight. Most minds live in one option and imagine alternatives. You live in alternatives and occasionally visit one option long enough to sign a lease. Knowing this will not erase the grief of choice, but it will remove the shame. You are built to run possibility. That is not a bug, that is your crown. Principle 2, the observer effect. In the lab, measuring a system changes it. Shine light to see an electron and the light kicks the electron. The very act of looking participates, sometimes dominates, what you find. Translate that inward. Meta-awareness does not behave like a mirror that reflects. It behaves like a tool that sculpts. The INTJ reviews a strategic plan and, by reviewing it, begins to optimize the review process itself until the plan and the meta-plan merge and the whole thing shifts. The INFJ senses grief rising, then instantly senses their own response to that grief, and then monitors the response to their response, spiraling into layers that are each sincere and yet each inherit the influence of the layer above. The INFP checks in on their authenticity. The check alters the feeling. Was I real just now, or was I trying to be real? The moment the question forms, the original feeling has changed clothes. The INTP starts observing their thinking as it unfolds and trips the process mid-step, like noticing your breathing and suddenly not remembering how to breathe automatically. This is why, just be yourself, is terrible advice for quantum minds. The second you aim at unself-consciousness, you are conscious. That does not mean you are doomed to perform your way through life. It means the skill you must cultivate is not erasing observation but refining it. Learn to watch without grabbing. Let awareness be a warm light, not a wrench. Principle 3, entanglement. Two particles created together can remain connected so that what happens to one is mirrored in the other, even when they are separated by distance. Einstein disliked this. He called it spooky. Yet it shows up, again and again, in experiments. Translate the pattern. Your mind exhibits non-local sensitivity. Your connections stretch. The INFJ walks into a space and their nervous system downloads the emotional state of the group before anyone speaks. They can name the weight hovering behind a smile. The INTJ studies traffic flow in a city and suddenly intuits a principle that applies to information flow in a company. Entirely different domains. Same geometry. The INFP hears a song and feels the person who wrote it, how they changed while writing it, and the piece of themselves that the song just changed in turn. The INTP reads a new concept at 2 a.m., and by 2:10 they are sketching out corollaries that have not been published yet, because ideas cross-pollinate in their mind faster than citation networks do on paper. Whether you prefer the language of intuition, pattern resonance, or collective unconscious does not matter for the practical point. You pick up signals that are not strictly local to what your five senses deliver in the moment. Treat this with respect. It can look like coincidence to people who do not experience it. You will be tempted to dismiss it to fit in. Do not. Test it gently. Keep a notebook. Notice how often your early read lands. Over time you will build an internal calibration, when to trust the tug and when to wait for confirmatory data. Principle 4, uncertainty. In physics, you cannot simultaneously pin down a particle's exact position and its exact momentum. Tighten one, loosen the other. This is not a flaw in your tools, it is a feature of the universe. Translate that to identity and direction. You cannot hold maximum clarity about who you are and where you are going at the same time. When the INTJ locks onto a distant vision with precision, their sense of present identity can blur. They become the vector more than the person. When the INFJ knows exactly who they are, with grounded values and a clear internal compass, their sense of mission fogs because the compass is consuming the map. When the INFP clarifies their deepest principles, the path that honors all of them at once refuses to appear, because any single road will violate at least one principle they cherish. When the INTP finally nails a clean model of how a system works, the question of what to do with that model becomes strangely opaque. You are not broken. You are experiencing the cost of measuring one axis too precisely. The hack is not to force both to be certain at once. The hack is to rhythm your life, phases for identity work, phases for trajectory, and rituals that help you pivot between them without panic. Principle 5. Decoherence. Quantum states stay delicate only as long as they are not entangled with the noisy environment. Touch the system and the wave function collapses into a single classical outcome. Translate that to life. To become specific, you must let go of the rest. The INTJ who finally ships the architecture they have been nursing for years kills off rival architectures with the same keystroke. The INFJ who says yes to a relationship says goodbye to 100 parallel love stories that could have unfolded with different people, different cities, different versions of themselves. The INFP who commits to a vocation hears doors thud closed in the hallway of their soul. The INTP who publishes a theory freezes one branch of the idea tree in print while the others continue to grow privately and diverge beyond what the paper can hold. This hurts. Not because you fear commitment, but because you feel the funerals. Most people decohere without noticing. You notice. So honor the grief. Build time to mourn the unlived lives. Then honor the life you chose by inhabiting it fully, knowing the price of reality is the death of unbounded potential. So how do you navigate a quantum mind in a classical world? You do not force yourself to become classical. You tune your practices to your physics. Start by making peace with superposition. Stop pretending you are one thing. You are plural, and your stability comes not from forcing a single self to dominate but from letting yourselves coordinate. For the INTJ, that means giving both the visionary and the implementer official seats at the table. Do not shame the implementer for being cautious or the visionary for being ambitious. For the INFJ, it means letting the empath and the analyst co-author your day. One listens, the other frames, then you act from the synthesis. For the INFP, it means naming your core themes so yourselves can harmonize: compassion, beauty, justice, truth. Different projects will highlight different themes, that is fine. For the INTP, it means scheduling time for divergent thinking and time for convergent summarizing. You cannot hold every branch forever. Decide in windows. Reopen later. Second, retrain the observer. Most of us learned observation as surveillance and judgment. Flip it. Practice what I call soft seeing. When a feeling rises, label it gently and let it be. When a thought gallops, notice its speed without pulling the reins. Meditation helps here, but so do practices like slow journaling, solo walks, and playing an instrument badly for the joy of it. The goal is not to stop awareness. The goal is to make awareness non-invasive so the system you are observing can keep expressing itself while you watch. Third, protect entanglement. Your signal-to-noise ratio improves when you reduce unnecessary input. You do not need 3 more opinion threads before you choose. You need quiet. Keep open hours in your week with no agenda. That is when improbable connections arrive. For the INFJ, a silent morning restores the antenna. For the INTJ, a whiteboard session with no deliverables lets patterns sense leap domains. For the INFP, a music and sunlight hour unsticks the soul. For the INTP, a meandering read through papers outside your field sparks crosslinks you would never find if you stayed inside your lane. Fourth, rhythm uncertainty. Build life in arcs. Quarter 1, identity work. Quarter 2, action. Quarter 3, identity revision. Quarter 4, action revision. On the micro level, you can do this weekly. Early week for sense-making, late week for execution. When you feel the anxiety that you are letting one axis blur, remind yourself that blurring is part of the method. You will tighten it again soon by design. Fifth, formalize grief for decoherence. Make a ritual when you choose. Write a short letter to the versions of you that will not live this timeline. Thank them. Name what they gave you while you were considering them. Archive the notes for the projects that did not win and add a calendar reminder months out to browse them like a museum of alternate lives. This is not self-indulgence. It is hygienic. It clears the ache so you can commit cleanly to the path you did pick. Now let us get even more specific for each type. INTJ, your gift is global foresight. You hold entire architectures in working memory and can stress test them before a single line of code or policy is written. Your trap is living forever in the simulator. To leverage your physics, set a decision cadence that honors superposition without letting it metastasize. Something like, explore broadly for 3 weeks, narrow for 1 week, decide on day 28, ship on day 42. During exploration, tell your team you are explicitly not deciding, they can relax. During narrowing, ask for adversarial input to pressure test. On decision day, accept the sting of collapse and move. Your superpower activates when probability becomes product. INFJ, your gift is non-local empathy linked to precise insight. You feel people deeply and frame the truth in language they can receive. Your trap is infinite regress, feeling about feeling until your own needs vanish inside other people's weather. To leverage your physics, anchor and daily self-attunement before you meet the world. Ask 3 questions. What am I carrying that is mine? What am I sensing that is not mine? And what truth wants to be spoken today? Keep a boundary mantra ready. Kindness without self-erasure. Your entanglement becomes medicine when you remain an intact self who can connect, not a sponge that dissolves. INFP, your gift is value radiance. You contain a cathedral of ideals and you invite others into sacred space with your presence and your art. Your trap is paralysis at the threshold because every path will betray something cherished. To leverage your physics, define a hierarchy of values that shifts by season. Not forever, just for now. This season, say beauty over precision, or justice over harmony, or truth over approval. Then choose projects that honor the top 2 and gently accept the trade-offs. Revisit the hierarchy every few months. This lets you decohere into action without betraying your soul. Each season lives one poem fully. INTP, your gift is elegant abstraction and conceptual synthesis. You find the axioms hiding underneath unruly data and you can redesign an entire model with one well-placed assumption swap. Your trap is endless refinement in the realm of thought while the world waits for your artifact. To leverage your physics, set output constraints that create productive collapse. Publish a memo every Friday at noon no matter what. Ship a version 0.1 every 6 weeks. Limit your reading list per problem to 5 sources before drafting your first pass. The constraint becomes your observer. It collapses the wave into a form others can use, and paradoxically, real feedback from the messy world improves your next theory faster than more theory would. Let us address a common fear. If I accept that I am quantum, will I drift into vagueness and never commit? No, quite the opposite. Owning your physics gives you a realistic playbook. Classical advice keeps telling you to be simple, to pick one identity, to lock in a 5-year plan and never look sideways. You try that and your mind revolts. When you design your life like a quantum system, alternating between divergence and convergence, honoring the cost of choice, practicing soft observation, protecting pattern sensitivity, you become profoundly effective. You ship more, not less, because you are no longer fighting your nature. You are using it. This is the deeper truth people often miss about quantum minds. Classical minds optimize for stability. The world needs that. Roads must be paved and trains must run on time. Quantum minds optimize for emergence. The world needs that too. Most breakthroughs come from people willing to stand in the fog, listen for faint signals, explore contradictory drafts of the future, and then collapse the wave at the right moment into something the rest of us can stand on. That is you at your best. If this reframe landed, I would love to have you here. Subscribe for more deep dives into typology, creativity, and the mechanics of consciousness. Tell me in the comments which principle described you most precisely today. Was it superposition and the ache of options? The observer effect and the difficulty of being natural on command? Entanglement and the eerie accuracy of your intuitions? Uncertainty and the tug of identity versus direction? Decoherence and the grief of becoming? I read everything, and your reflections shape the next videos we make together. Before we close, one last practice you can start tonight. Grab a page. Draw 2 columns, possibility and actual. Under possibility, list the futures currently alive in your mind without censoring. Under actual, write the one step you will take in the next 24 hours to honor one of those futures in the real world. 1. Not 5. Then, at the bottom of the page, write a short farewell to the futures you are not taking today. Not forever, just today. Thank them for keeping you imaginative. Promise to revisit them during your next divergence phase. Then take your step. That is how quantum minds move: gentle grief, clear action, repeat.